Do you know the difference between being rich and being wealthy? In fact, would you rather be rich or would you rather be wealthy? In this video, I'm going to talk about the difference between these two distinctions. And at the end, you tell me which one you would rather be. Being rich. Don't we all aspire to being rich? Doesn't it sound great to be rich? Rich, the way I like to think about being rich is, yeah, of course, aspire to be rich. But being rich doesn't necessarily mean that you're wealthy. So what's the difference? Being rich on this side of the line, I like to think of being rich as this is what you can see. So we can see if other people are rich, or we make the assumption that they're rich because we see their big houses, we see their fancy cars, we see their expensive watches, we see their amazing shoes, their incredible Louis bags. So we look at people, what they're wearing, where they live, what they're driving, and we think, ooh, look at them, they're rich. You're maybe at a restaurant and then a Lambo comes up to the valet and you're thinking, oh, that dude hasn't made, he's rich. So the thing is we see with our eyes and we just make this assumption that those people that display riches are rich. It's not necessarily true. So that's rich. What's the difference between rich and being wealthy? Well, wealth is something we can't see with our eyes. So it's like it's invisible. So wealth is invisible. And what I mean by that is you can see my fancy car that I might drive. I can invite you over to my expensive house and I can display my watches, which clearly I don't have. But so you can see all that. And like I said, make the assumption. But you can't see my financial statements. You can't see my bank statements. You can't see the cash I have in the bank. You can't see my brokerage accounts. You can't see my Coinbase account. So all of that is on this side of the line. And that's what wealth is. And a quick story is that where I think it's important is that I spent 10 years of my life hustling, grinding, building a multi-seven-figure business. I was an icon in my industry, in the real estate industry. Everybody knew who I was publicly, and I dressed a certain way, and I drove certain things, and I lived in the house that everybody loved to come visit. And I had this business, it had all these employees, and I owned this big building, and people would throw all these events and parties. And so from a public appearance, I was rich. And that looked great. I mean, I worked really hard to build my business and to build my riches, for example, and to afford a certain lifestyle that I'd worked hard to really achieve and to enjoy. But then what happened is at the height of my career, I got really sick. I mean, so sick, I couldn't get out of bed. I lost my ability to think. I lost my ability to talk. I couldn't sleep. I literally could not get out of bed for over a year. And it took me 2 years to get my health back. And there was a period of time in there when I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. So the reason I tell that story is that it took me 10 years of blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, all the things to build this amazing business and build this rich public identity of this very successful entrepreneur. I won all these female entrepreneurial awards and all the things. And then I get sick. How long do you think it took my business to fall apart when I couldn't show up every day to take care of this big, rich life that was afforded by my business? It took me 10 years to build this business. And guess what? Within 6 months, the thing started deteriorating and collapsing. And because I wasn't there, the business started to fall apart. I couldn't even believe how fast it fell apart. I mean, 10 years to build it and 6 months to fall apart. So that was like this awakening, is that my business couldn't feed me when I was not feeding it. But privately, no, but even though I had this massive public identity and this huge, success story, on the side over here, nobody knew this, but privately, I was buying some real estate. I was investing in other assets. I was doing, just doing the things because I wanted someday to have financial freedom and, all the things that I teach here, for example. So I was doing this, but nobody saw this. They didn't see the different pieces of real estate I was acquiring. They didn't see the cash in the bank account. That was invisible. I got all my praise over here. So my ego was fed here. But when I was in bed and couldn't, get out of bed, and when I was sick, that ego couldn't be fed anymore either. But this was the ego side. Over here, I was doing this because, that's what I want to do, was build this thing called financial freedom, like I said. But when the business fell apart, what fed me? It was some cash flows earlier on in my, in this wealth building journey, but I had enough wealth there that gave some cash flow that covered some of the bills. But better than that, it cost me over $250,000 to save my life. So where did that $250,000 come from? It didn't come from my business. My business was basically going, just going down towards bankruptcy just so damn fast. But over here, I was able to sell assets, and I was able to cash in on this private thing over here called wealth that enabled me to pay for the care and to do the things that ultimately saved my life. So that's where I had this aha moment of like, oh my gosh, we're just chasing this being rich, and we're not building wealth because our egos, and we want people to see this impressive lifestyle. And we like to buy things that are impressive to others, not knowing what cost that focusing on riches ultimately does cost us. So riches are what we can see. Wealth is what we can't see. Now, what riches are, it's a form of money that I like to say. It's a form of money that's income and debt. So think about this. We can make a high income and we can buy a nice house. We can buy that fancy car. We can buy all those things, right? And we buy those things that are impressive, that make us impress others and that feel impressive. And sure, we get some eyeballs. Maybe it feels good. It feeds that ego. Nothing wrong with that. But it's just to understand is that our high incomes can afford then this high lifestyle. But also it's a form of income of debt because we can buy a fancy car, but it's not like we're buying a $150,000 G-Class Mercedes with cash. Most are affording it through debt, some form of debt. So we buy our houses in form of debt. We buy our cars in some form of debt. We buy our lives in forms of debt. So people can be like leveraged to the hilt and still appear like they're rich. But what debt allows us to do is basically afford a lifestyle because our expensive lifestyle is a bunch of very expensive debt payments. And that's what happens is that we just make more money and we gain more debt. Again, to live, when we can afford debt payments of $2,000 a month, and now we can afford debt payments of $200,000 a month, that makes this really expensive lifestyle, then it can just even become more stressful because there are people making $500,000 a year and they're drowning in debt. They're drowning in it. They're month to month. And that's what I call the money trap is you make all this money, but then you have to go back to the grind and the hustle to afford that lifestyle, and you get caught on that. So that's what riches are. Riches are a form of income, and as long as you have enough income to cover all the debt payments, that expensive lifestyle, you can live rich, right? You can afford that lifestyle as long as you have the income to afford it. On this side of the equation, it's not a focus on income, and if you use any type of debt, it's just debt to make more money. But this is focused on assets. So it's a form of money that focuses on assets. And that can be cash. It can be crypto. It can be real estate. It can be stocks. But it's the money that you save and invest that you don't spend. That's what wealth is. This is all the money you spend. This is all the money you don't spend. So that's great to make high incomes and to be rich. But what happens, it's something that I call high income broke. I just spoke at a real estate conference. I think there's like 600-700 people in the room. And I had them write this down. I said, write this down. High income broke is the same as low income broke. Both are one paycheck from disaster. So that's what I mean. People can be making $500,000 a year and still be struggling month to month. So the problem is these high incomes are deceptive. High incomes that we focus on just making more money to buy more expensive things, to be more impressive and to impress more people. What that does is it makes us feel rich, and so we spend accordingly on these expensive lifestyles. And what that's doing is when we make, let's say, $100,000 a month, for example, and we spend $100,000 a month, there's zero left over. We're spending every dollar we make between our business and our household on the business and our lifestyle. So what that does is it robs us of over here of creating this wealth. Because if we have zero left over at the end of the month, we don't have anything to buy these assets. And so that's what's happening. We get locked into these expensive lifestyles that robs us of building this wealth that we think because we have this lifestyle, we are wealthy, when we're not. We're just month to month and have to go churn out the next month of producing $100,000 of income, which can be very stressful. So it's just to understand that we want to make sure that as we grow our income, we're also growing our wealth. And that's the goal. We grow our riches, meaning our income, and we take a portion of that we don't spend and we buy assets, and we have money that's sitting around for, cash liquidity in the moments that we need that. The problem is the assumption is that here, that we assume that when we make a lot of money and we can buy these impressive things, that will make us happy, that this material part of money, the watches, the cars, the houses, that's what brings happiness. And it's just a false assumption. I can't tell you the number of people I know, and maybe they have plenty of money in the sense of riches, meaning they're making a high income, but they're stressed out, they're miserable, they're divorced, their kids don't like them. There's so many family and life problems that come just to focus on this side. Because again, it's this assumption that more money means happiness. And so people are chasing this material wealth versus financial wealth. And because they think that will make them happy, more money means more happiness. When it's not the material things that people want, it's the autonomy. So when we can understand that it's autonomy that we're after, meaning that we have control of our time, we have control of our life, that's what happiness is. Happiness is the freedom, the time freedom that comes from having wealth. Happiness is having control over our time. So money can only make us happy when we can use it to control our time and our life in a way that creates less financial stress, that creates less need to go back and spend more time in the business. That's where money and happiness collide, is when money is freedom, when money is control of our time, when money gives us more options. That's where money and happiness come together. It's not over here in the chase of money, status, luxury, more convenience, and ultimately just impress more people. So in the comments, write down if we would rather be rich or if you would rather be wealthy. And if you haven't already subscribed, you know what to do. Please subscribe, send a comment, and just let me know what you think. As always, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.